welcome to Wordpath, the show about Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are teaching and preserving them. Tonight's show is very special to me because my guests are three friends of language preservation in Oklahoma. Let me first introduce America Meredith, who is a friend, an artist, an OU student, and a Wordpath crew member. Most of the time, she even will be part-time tonight. Osio, America.
Osio alas wado. Osta sahiyei. Aya America Meredith Dagwadoa. Jijalagi Yonaga Chikahamani no. Ushalagi Jiwon. I'm not fluent. I'm trying to learn Cherokee. I'm America Meredith. I'm Cherokee. I'm Red Paint Clan. And I try to use the language in my art. I incorporate it. I'm very happy that even though I'm not fluent, I get to help save native languages by working on this show. And I also work for Noxie Press, which is my family's Cherokee language publishing company. And we publish books that are actually in the syllabary. This is one example. The Cherokee Vision of Alo, this is our oral history that we got to write down and publish for the people. And I think Cherokees are kind of unique that we don't have much of a visual arts tradition, so it's kind of our syllabary that is the one thing that's identifiably Cherokee. So I try to incorporate it in my art as much as possible. This particular piece is Grandfather Moon, and around the edges I have printed a greeting in Cherokee that you say every month to the new moon when you see it. And this goes, Guyaliga edud, eti skinu sesti, iwedi gitali, digina dagalati igesti. And this, I'm just glad that I get to help out. Even though I don't speak the language yet, I hope to learn it soon. And someone who knows a lot more about the language is my fellow camera person on Intertribal Wordpath is Ryan Mackey, who will be talking tonight with Jennifer Kovar, who is a linguistics and women's studies student at OU. And they'll be discussing a little bit about the art, mainly storytelling and the role of language and its importance today.
I don't mean to interrupt you, America. I just want to get out of your way. I'm going to let you bring them on, and then they can introduce themselves some more. I'm just going to get out of everybody's way and go upstairs and direct some. Thank you so much.
Ostanda. Y'all, come on up. Jennifer, thanks for showing up.
Thank you, America.
Here's your mic.
My name is Jennifer Kovar. I'm a student at the University of Oklahoma, and I am a student of linguistics and women's studies, and I'm here with Ryan Mackey. Hi, Ryan.
Hello. OCO, I guess in Cherokee that's how we say hi to each other. From what I understand, OC is the word for good, and if you stick the sound OE on the end, that's kind of like good repeatedly.
OCO. I would like to know how many dialects the Cherokee language has.
That's kind of under some contention right now, I guess. Some people would say we don't have any. They say back east when we lived in the eastern mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains back east before the Trail of Tears, that there were 4 dialects. There was an overhill, there was a underhill, there was a middle dialect, and there was an eastern dialect. And when they came to Oklahoma, those dialects were split up into different communities, and maybe some of them fused. And through cultural isolation, they think there may be close to 8 dialects in Oklahoma that have grown out of those 4.
What causes dialects to change?
Well, I guess there are a lot of possibilities that could cause a change in a dialect. From cultural isolation, which is what I think might have caused this, to cultural diffusion, maybe other cultures having an influence. Like maybe those Cherokees that had settled around the creeks, their language would become more similar to a Muskogee, language, and those that might have settled close to the Senecas. Theirs might have been more similar to the Iroquoian languages.
Now, what do these different dialects sound like? When do you know you're hearing a different dialect?
Well, Cherokee, the way it works, it's polysyllabic, and so it has a lot of sounds that go together to make a word, and all those sounds generally have a meaning, a morpheme of their own, from what I understand from linguistics class. And certain dialects drop out syllables and drop out certain morphemes than other dialects would. Maybe say the people that still live in eastern Carolina, in that area, that continue their language back there, they would say instead of gotta oost, which is how most Cherokees in Oklahoma would say what is, they say do oost. So they would drop off that ga. And if you just listen to somebody, even of a different dialect, for a little bit, you can usually figure out the pattern that they're trying to speak to you.
And how long have you been speaking Cherokee? All your life?
Well, I'm not a fluent speaker. It's really hard to become a fluent speaker if Cherokee isn't your first language. My grandpa and all his siblings, they spoke Cherokee, and he passed away when I was 8. And it wasn't real important for my mom to pass this on to me, but I heard it a lot when I was young, and I could say quite a few things when I was young. I probably could have never carried on a conversation. I'm probably closer to that now. The classes here at the University of Oklahoma, they've given me a lot more of a background and a lot more of understanding about how it's put together. And I dance at a ceremonial ground as often as I can get back there, and they mostly speak Cherokee back there, so I get a lot of practice with them.
Just so we know, what other languages does the Native Languages program teach?
Well, for sure they teach Muskogee, which is Creek Seminole. They also teach Kiowa and Choctaw. I've also heard rumors that they're going to teach Osage, and I know that you can, through independent study, learn Cheyenne.
Good. Would you like to talk about what you're wearing today?
Yeah, I guess so. My father was kind enough to take me to North Carolina last summer, and they still finger weave out there. There are a few Cherokees back here that finger weave. A lot of Muskogee people do it, but back there they still do the real wide belts. And
that is amazing. It's beautiful.
And the ribbon shirt was made by a Cherokee from my hometown. And when people dance at the ceremonial grounds, they usually wear a cowboy hat. My dad got me this hat a while back, and the feathers on it, the eagle represents peace bird, a good feeling, and usually that hawk feather is worn by a young warrior, usually somebody who's not as wise.
Mm-hmm. And what else did you bring with you?
This is a gourd rattle. Sometimes when people sing songs, they'll use a turtle shell rattle, or in the grounds they'll use a gourd rattle or a coconut shell rattle. And I made it with dyed, I guess, buckskin, and just a regular gourd. And this is an old drumstick that I had that I used to make it. And this is some deer hide with hair still on it. I have a ribbon that I tied 2 bald eagle feathers on there with. I believe these are from around the lower part of its wing.
And how long did that take to make?
Oh, not too long. Not very hard at all. Maybe an hour.
Maybe we should talk about what we have around us. Can we show this picture real quick and talk about it?
Yeah, those are the main staples of the old traditional Cherokee diet. Our men did hunt, but most of our food, some say as much as 80 to 90% of it, was from farming, agriculture. A lot of people don't realize that Cherokees weren't nomadic. They didn't wander around like a lot of other tribes. They stayed put and they farmed. And this is corn, beans, and squash. And our word for corn is selu. Our word for beans is tuyi. And our word for squash, which I just learned tonight from America, is squash, which makes good sense, I guess. And how they would plant that is they would put the corn down there first, and they would plant 7 kernels, because 7 is a sacred number to us. I'm sure there are a lot of other good reasons for planting 7 kernels. But and they would put a mound up around that, a small mound, and then around that they would plant the squash and plant the beans. And they say that the minerals that those other growing plants put back into the soil each support each other, and they help keep each other healthy and grow stronger.
This picture is by America Meredith, and it's titled 3 Sisters, or what is that in Cherokee?
Oh, well, sisters is there are a bunch of different ways to say it, I guess. If I'm talking about sisters, if I'm talking to them straight, if I'm talking about them in a third person, it's a completely different word. So probably it would be jo'ini, which is kind of like three sisters in kind of an informal way.
Good. So you're talking about talking in third person or talking first person. And now, when are some other instances where you have to change out like that?
Well, Cherokee has what they say are 4 paradigms. They don't understand Cherokee very well yet. There have been people studying it for the last 300, 400 years, but it's kind of a difficult language, and when it's your first language, it comes to you naturally. And the rules are kind of complicated. And from what I understand, the 4th paradigm, which is much more different from the other 3, has more to do with the state of being, like I'm tired or I'm sick, as opposed to I'm running or I'm jumping. And then there are pronoun prefixes that are added onto the front that change things from anywhere between first person to 10th person.
Wow.
And what most people think of as third person, in Cherokee class they called that 9th person. We distinguish between you and me and someone else. We distinguish between those 2 people over there. Any way that you can distinguish it, it's a possibility in Cherokee. We're really literal. There's also something called classifying verbs, and there are certain verbs that have their roots change, which is the central part that makes that word its central meaning. It'll change depending on what you're talking about. Say I'm talking about a rod, and I would ask you to pass me that rod over there. The word pass would change if I was asking about something long and rigid like a rod than something filled with water like a jar. And you add that with the tenses and the prefixes. And then there's another thing called subject-object, which I'm talking to you. It's another thing in there with a pronoun prefix where it gives a little bit more detail. Like jiha would be, if I were to stick that on the beginning of a first paradigm verb, would mean that I'm talking to you specifically. And I guess it makes it kind of complicated. I have a pretty big vocabulary in Cherokee, and I can understand a lot of what people have to tell me, but I'm not real confident with my mastery of these nuances to where I would feel comfortable speaking. When I do go home and speak to my family, they laugh at me. Not to be mean, but because it's funny. It's sometimes I say funny things on accident because
it's good entertainment.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to hear a story.
A story?
Yeah.
I could tell you a short story. I guess I could tell you about a little bit about Meredith's painting right here. She has a picture of a turtle, Doxy, and a rabbit, Gistu. And some people call that rabbit Briar Rabbit. We just call him Gistu, and to us, he's like a trickster. He's like our eastern tribe's coyote. And they say he can outsmart anybody. Well, Turtle used to be a real tough guy, and because of a mistake he made, he became weak, and he has to carry around a shell for protection. And he wasn't a very boastful guy, but Rabbit is. And Turtle was trying to put Rabbit in his place. And he howled a long time ago. When Rabbit and Turtle were lining up for the race, all the other animals, they were there waiting. And Doxy, Turtle, had all his brothers, all his Squeezedindatli, all his brothers, they were hiding in the woods, or hiding off a little ways away. And they had set the date, and everybody knew in advance when it was going to be. And Gistu, the rabbit, he was all psyched up about it. And Doxy was sitting calmly on that line and waiting. And they said when that Nandaiga, that sun, reached its zenith in the middle of the day, they would start the race. And when it did, everybody said, Idalena, Idalena, Inalena. And at that point, both that rabbit and that turtle took off. And just like everybody suspected, that turtle was left in that rabbit's dust. The goal of this race was to race to the top of 7 hills, Gatsquilgine Odali, 7 mountains. And when each one crested the mountain, they were supposed to holler a hoop. When that rabbit passed that turtle, he slowed down a little bit, and as he was reaching the top of that Agai Odali, that first mountain, he was getting ready to holler. But up ahead of him, he heard a hee! And he knew that somebody had just reached the top of that mountain. And he looked up there, and he could see that Doxy, that turtle. He was cresting the top of that ridge, and he went down, and without any problem at all, that Gistu, he picked up some speed and passed him again. And he started to slow down. He's like, I passed that turtle again. That Doxy is so far behind me. And that Talini Odali, that second hill, was coming up. And he was trotting to the top of that, and he was getting ready to holler. And again, right in front of him, he heard, hee! He's like, oh my gosh, that Doxy, he got in front of me again, that turtle. Well, this happened another 4 times. And at this point, the rabbit's getting a little bit aggravated. And he had passed that turtle that 6th time, and he was reaching that 7th hill, and he knew that he was going to beat him. He knew for sure that he was going to beat him because he had passed him. And he didn't see any turtle in front of him. He didn't see that Doxy in front of him at all. As he was reaching the top of that mountain, out in front of him pops this Doxy, this turtle, on the Gatsquilgine Odali, that 7th mountain, and went, hee! And that rabbit, he was so mad, he spit in the dirt, and he kicked around, and he walked off, and he was angry. And that Yona and Sladuj and all these animals, the bear and the panther, they all walked up to Doxy and said, now how did you do that? How did you beat Rabbit? He said it was simple. You gotta trust in your family. I had 7 of my brothers, and as long as I was there to start the race and there to finish the race, they could carry out the rest of the race for me.
That's a good story. Well, Ryan, I'm holding here one of America Meredith's pictures, and it's showing a girl preparing for a dance. Would you like to describe what it's doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess she's sitting in a lawn chair. At the grounds, almost everybody sits out in a lawn chair, and there's a big fire in the center. And the men will sing, but the first guy out in front, he's usually an elder or somebody who's well-versed in the culture. He'll lead a song, and that means he'll say a few words, and then all the other guys behind him will respond. And they move in kind of a slow spiral around that fire. And and in between each guy is a woman. The women don't sing per se, but most people would agree with me and say that what the women do is more important, or at least just as important as the men. We believe in a balance. The women's voice are their legs, their shells. Their shell shackles is what we call them, I guess. And at the grounds, they're turtles, ducks. And when the ground leader will call out for people to come dance, he'll say, Doxano, Doxano, and tell all the turtles to come out and say, Age Stel, help him out. And indoor dances and Muskogee Creek tribes, they'll wear these condensed milk can shells on their legs, which make a similar sound. And when the men are singing, the women are shaking these shells or cans, depending. And that's the heartbeat of the song. And without their women's voice there couldn't be a dance. This woman here is tying them on and getting ready. They have to tie them on real tight so they don't fall off, because when they dance, they kick their feet really hard and really fast. And there are older women that can go out there and dance all night long, and they say it helps to keep you young.
And are these very heavy?
Oh, well, the turtles, they're a little bit heavier, but part of the reason why people started using cans is because they were lighter.
And then behind you, we have a picture of 5 men on a field playing stickball.
I guess this is another one of America's artworks. The men behind me have stickball sticks. And when they dance, they have just one part of that ceremony at the grounds. But earlier in the day, this is a real important part where people play a game of stickball. There are basically 2 types of ways to play it. Most of the people at Cherokee grounds now, they play it in a way where it's men against women. The men have to use those sticks, and the women can use their hands. And on that piece of art, you can see those men in front wrestling with each other, trying to get that ball. And behind them, you see a ball pole with a fish on top. And when you're playing men against women, they throw that ball up and try to hit the fish. And if you hit the fish, that's worth 7 score points. And if there's a little line just below that fish, if you hit the pole, then that's worth 1 score point. And they play to the fire mound, to where the ash meets. And they play men against women, and this establishes a balance between men and women, and an understanding that both men and women are equal. There's the second way that I mentioned, where it's men on men. And most of the Cherokee grounds now are small enough to where this doesn't get played very often. But it'll be a similar game where everybody's using sticks and the women aren't playing. And sometimes it can get really rough. And there's another version that the Eastern Cherokee play where they have cross poles. And they'll have a big field and one cross pole on the end and another cross pole on the other end. I guess if you can look in the background of that picture, next to those cedar trees, you can see those cross poles represented. And those men, they'll get out in the middle of that field, and they'll play and try to throw that ball between those cross poles, and they'll score points that way. This was sometimes called the Little Brother of War. Instead of a Cherokee town fighting another Cherokee town, they would settle disputes that might become violent in this more peaceful way.
Good. Well, let's make a clear point real quick, why it's so important to learn languages.
Well, for us Cherokees, we believe that unless we know our language when we meet God after we die and we meet our ancestors, they won't know how to talk to us. So it's real important to us in that way. And each tribe has their own reasons. Some people, they can't practice any of their ceremonies unless they do it in their native language. Other people, they can't name their children, which is very important to them unless they do it in their language. It establishes a worldview, a way of seeing yourself and knowing your place in your own world, knowing your place in your community. It also gives people a sense of, a really strong sense of identity and pride that they wouldn't have otherwise. if you want to get to know a native people, the best way would be to understand their native language.
I agree, and I also think that wherever you are, you need to learn the language of the people you're among.
Wadon. Thanks so much, America, Ryan, and Jennifer. The art was beautiful, the story was beautiful, everything was just wonderful, and it's wonderful to hear the Cherokee language. By the way, we need some new crew members for the show. I keep saying this, and I'm just amazed that more Norman citizens don't come join us. Wouldn't you like to come join these wonderful crew members, America, Ryan, and myself? We're very interesting, and we have a great time here. It requires just a one evening class to become qualified to become a member of a crew here. If you're an 18-year-old or older and a Norman resident, just call 600-6941. The next training class is the third Thursday in May, and we'd love to have you join us. See you next time on Wordpath.
Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita.